session today. Before we jump into all the fun stuff we're going to go into, I want to make sure I introduce everybody at the table here for the people who are just joining us. Now, my name is Liz LePage, and I've been working with ON1 for quite a few years now. You might recognize my voice. I do a ton of educational tutorials for ON1. I'm also a professional photographer, retoucher, and educator based here in Portland, Oregon. And I want to move on and introduce Dan next.
Hi everybody, I'm Dan Harlacher. I'm the Director of Product Management here at ON1 Software. I help with the design and leading the team that implements all the features that you guys use every day. Hudson?
I'm Hudson Henry. I'm a local Portland, Oregon photographer and photo educator, and I'm really proud to be hosting this in my studio today. Blake?
I'm Blake Rudis from F64Academy.com. I'm a Kansas City-based photographer, so anybody out of Kansas City. I specialize in workflow processes to make your workflow more efficient.
Now, we've been talking about a ton of stuff today, and I want to make sure I mention the fact that everything is being recorded. So we went over new features and our favorite features in ON1 RAW and Lightroom and Photoshop integration. And both of those sessions are going to be recorded so that people who are just joining us are going to be able to rewatch those, which is really cool. Now, we've also been taking questions from you all day, and I want to make sure I mention this is your last chance to get those questions into us. So tweet us with hashtag #AskOn1 and ask us the questions that are really important. We're going to be doing a Q&A at the end of this session. Now, in this live session, we're really excited. I'm actually going to pass it over to Dan in just a minute because Dan is going to introduce you guys to what's actually coming next in ON1. And there's a lot of really incredible stuff for you guys, so it doesn't stop here. It's actually going to keep on going into 2017. So, take it away, Dan.
Yeah, Liz is right. This first version of Photo RAW 2017 is really the beginning of the journey, and there's so much more that I want to show you guys. If this was an Apple keynote, this would be the, oh yeah, there's one more thing coming part. So I've got a lot of cool information for you guys, so watch close. So first off, everybody, and this is probably the biggest question we've had today, is when can I get my hands on this thing? I want to start using Photo RAW now. Well, you'll be able to start using it on Wednesday. Anyone who pre-ordered it or anyone who is an ON1 Plus Pro member will get access to the pre-release. When I say pre-release, think of it like a beta. It's not the finished software, but all the features are there. Most of the bad bugs we've ironed out. It gives you a chance to get a hold of it and start to use it and provide us feedback on it. We'll continue to improve it over the next month until the official release in December. Now, there are a couple things that we've disabled for this preview release because we're still working on them. So one of them is the importing of your old presets. And that's a really important thing. We want to make sure we get it just right. In the final version, it will automatically find all of your presets you've made in effects, you know, the ones that you've created, the ones you've got from loyalty rewards, and also the ones that you may have purchased from some of our gurus. And we'll translate those over and put them into the new language that the new version of effects needs. We'll also have the crop tool and the navigator loop and histogram will come back. We'll continue to improve our RAW processing. We'll add support for compressed Fuji RAW files, something that's just recently changed in their firmware to compress those. And the Photoshop extension panel will add support for your presets for effects and develop.
Very cool.
Yeah, so lots of cool stuff. Get your hands on the preview release 2 days' time. Now, in December 19th, we've got an early Christmas present for you. That's when the official general release will come out. That adds all those little things that we mentioned that won't be quite ready yet. Plus, it'll do all that preset conversion that I mentioned. It'll add more cameras. Each month we have the opportunity to add more supported cameras. So as those new cameras come out, we'll add those. So if you've looked at the supported camera list and your new camera's not on there, by December or January, I bet it will be ready to go. We'll also continue to improve our RAW processing. Every camera is a little different, needs a little bit of extra tweaks on each camera to get the best results. We'll continue to refine that. A lot of that's going to be based on the feedback that we get from you guys over the next month about how to make that processing look better. We'll improve our brushing quality and the transitions between modules and photos. So today you can easily switch modules in the film strip view and you can switch between development effects. We just want to make that a little smoother process for you.
That's pretty incredible because it's already really smooth in the
Like, wait a second, hold on.
Yeah.
You guys are going to be shocked in December.
We've been working with sort of the pre-release. And
Yep.
and it's
Holy
pretty
cow.
amazing.
Right.
I just want to put a little whoosh sound. When you click it, it'll go whoosh in the next one. So we just have to get the whoosh in.
Can we change that sound?
Maybe next year. So.
Ding.
All right. And of course, there'll be other bug fixes and performance enhancements that we'll make. Now, past that release in December, like I said, that's really the beginning of the journey. That's where we need your help. This is the next step. What we need is your guys' feedback on what to do. Now, if you go to our website, you go to the product page, at the top you'll see something called the Photo RAW project. And this is a place where you, the users, can suggest features that you want, create a community to talk about those features, how they should work, vote on the ones that are most important to you, and that's what helped drive our product roadmap. That's what we look at to figure out what to build next. It's all about you and what you guys need. It's not just a bunch of engineers sitting in a room thinking about what would be the next cool thing to do. It's really customer driven. We've changed our development process so that every month we'll be able to give you a new release for free to add on new features. So in December and in January and in February and March, all new features. And I'm going to show you some of the ones that we're working on already. So on that Photo RAW project page, you can see some of the great suggestions that have come in already. There's over 300 ideas that have already come in from our users. And we prioritize and rate those to figure out what to do next. So let's talk about some of those. The things that are coming next year kind of fall into three groups. Some things are features that we've had in the past that really require that we rebuild them from the ground up in order to support a non-destructive and a raw workflow. So there's a couple of the tools that you don't use very often that we're still working on. There's also some, what I think of as essential features to a raw processor that we just didn't have time to do. We're going to add those as well. We'll talk about what those are. And then again, there's all the stuff that you guys have suggested through the Photo RAW project. All right, so some of the masking tools that you're used to having in effects will be coming back. Now, that doesn't mean you can't mask today. The most essential tools are in there. You already have the masking brush with a perfect brush option for edge detecting color. You've got the masking bug for doing gradient masks in round and in planar shapes. And you've got the refine brush, which is really the key if you're doing like hair and smoke and fog, the really difficult stuff to get rid of those edges. But there's a few other tools that we had to put on hold for now that you'll get in early 2017. So the quick mask tool will come back, as well as the blur and chisel tool and the line mask tool.
We love that blur and chisel tool, man.
Yeah, so you'll have
it's one of my favorites.
the complete range of masking tools that you need in effects in a non-destructive way. So it really comes back to what we were talking about earlier today about control. You're going to have all the control you need on those masks. We'll also bring the clone stamp tool to a non-destructive workflow as well. Again, it doesn't mean you can't retouch today. There's lots of retouching tools. You already have the perfect eraser for content-aware filling of larger objects and the retouch brush for smaller things or things where you want to control the opacity or the feather on your retouching. Those are there. But we'll also add the clone stamp tool because, gosh darn it, there's just times where the clone stamp is the only way to get things like a brick pattern in order to get the brick to line up.
Yeah.
That's the only one that'll really do it. We'll also bring back the red eye tool for removing red eye. And we'll add a new portrait filter to effects. Now, a lot of you who are portrait photographers may be looking for where's my portrait module. There used to be a dedicated portrait module, but in talking with our users, they've told us they really want to use it within the context of effects because it's just part of their workflow. There's all sorts of other things that they do too. They want to use dynamic contrast or they want to use one of Liz's great matte presets in there. So we will be putting in a new portrait filter that'll be in addition to the new skin retouching filter that's already there. This will be a face-based retouching tool. You'll actually be able to identify faces. It'll detect the skin in the face based on where the face is that you tell it. From that, it'll smooth blemishes, it'll reduce shine, it'll even out the skin color, all those great skin-based things. But then you can also click on the eyes and click on the corners of the mouth to add a three-dimensional overlay where it will then automatically help you whiten teeth, whiten eyes, enhance detail in those features without having to brush them.
And I don't know about you guys, but it always felt like something that belonged in effects to me. I'm really happy to see it moving there. It just seems like a step in the process and not something that you should round trip someplace else to do. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it's great because then you can turn it on and off too within it. And you can fade the whole thing.
Right.
Because a lot of times I do this all the time. I do all my retouching and I get back and like, oh, I went a little overboard there. Instead of having to go to another module and move a bunch of sliders, I just have a single opacity slider if I do it in effects.
Yeah.
So it's easy to change.
Right there in the stack, moving it.
And you can make presets with it that way too.
Exactly.
They can include everything else. So I can slap a preset on and then just move the opacity for it.
Ears,
So-
Dan. Music to my ears.
Yeah, so
It's
lots
beautiful.
of cool stuff coming. So that's just the stuff that we're going to bring back that you've had. But let's talk about some of the new things. So one we've talked about a little bit already is the Lightroom Migration Assistant. There's a lot of you out there who are Lightroom users, and Lightroom is a great tool. I'm not saying that you should switch from it, but if you want to move your content over, we're going to make it easy with the Migration Assistant. Not only will it move all of your collections and all of your presets that you've created in Lightroom, but it'll also move all of the photo metadata and all of the developed settings. So in an individual photo, if you've gone in and adjusted the exposure and the contrast and things like that, it'll bring those settings in as well. There'll also be a best practices guide coming in December that will help early adopters through the process manually before that assistant is available. All right, let's talk about 2 features that I think are really important that we'll be adding. The first one is a compare mode. So oftentimes you shoot a burst of photos that are all very similar to each other. It could be a family portrait, for example, or maybe a sports scene. And you want to go through and pick out which one is the best. So the new compare mode will combine the ability to survey view, look at multiple photos at once, enlarged, as well as zoom into them to 100% at the same time. So here's how it works. Inside of Browse, from the film strip, I can just select as many photos as I want. Each time I select a photo in compare view, it'll just add a box at the top. So right now I have these 3 photos selected. I can then, just by changing my selection, remove a photo from that compare view. So if I don't want one, I can just arrow to that and deselect it using the deselect key that I'm used to using, that slash key. I can also click to zoom in, and it will zoom and pan locked together 100% on all of those photos. So you can actually check the eyes on more than 2 photos at once. So it makes it really fast to go through and pick out your favorite photo. And of course, whichever one is your super selected photo will be the super selected photo up above. So any of your keyboard shortcuts for things like making it a favorite or rotating or tagging will all be targeted towards that selected photo.
I know that Liz and I are both looking at this, thinking about some of our client shoots, thinking
Oh, my
that
gosh.
is huge.
I mean, it's going to make a big difference. It's
So
gonna be huge
easy to
difference.
check focus. You know,
Yeah.
you not only pare it down to the photos that look like they're the best composition, but click and you see all of them come in.
Yeah. I mean, today I have to go to Photoshop to do that because in Lightroom I can only look at 2 at a time zoomed in. Now I can look at 3 or 4 all zoomed in to 100%, all locked panning together. So I can look at one face and then the next face and pick out which one is the best in the series. All right. The other cool new feature I want to talk about are groups. So a lot of times you will photograph similar photos that you want to be able to kind of squish down into a single group. Think of it like a folder, but you don't want to make a folder to do this. This is great for HDR brackets, it's great for motor drive sequences, or even if you're a portrait photographer and you've got 5 or 6 shots that are all the same scene, and you just need to pick out your favorite within the scene.
Panoramics and time lapse.
Panoramas, oh yeah, definitely, time lapse. So what you can do is you just select all the photos that are together, the ones you want to think of as a group. You right click and you say make it a group. And those will all collapse down into what looks like one single photo, one group of photo, or stack of photos if you will. From here you can name that group whatever you want, and you notice there's a little badge that tells me, hey, that's a group. If I double click on it, it works just like a folder. It'll drill down. Oops, sorry, let me go back one, I went too fast. Oh, you guys saw all the good stuff coming. I've ruined it.
That's okay. There it is.
There we go. So if I double click on that folder, you'll see just the photos that are inside of that group. I can pick which ones is on the top, which one I'm going to edit, and if I want, I can select all of them, and I can apply metadata to all of those photos or to whichever one is selected. So I have full control over how it works, but it uses that same similar folder hierarchy that we're used to. So for example, right up here, you notice in the breadcrumbs bar, it actually shows me the name of that group that I created. I can easily arrow back to go back where I was. All right. Lots more coming though too. This is all stuff that's coming for free in the first half of 2017. So lens correction is a huge topic. This is one that we've seen a lot come in over the questions today. In the version that you'll have on Wednesday and in December, there's manual lens corrections. They'll correct for barrel distortion and pincushion distortion. And you can also correct for horizontal and vertical perspective as well. Not really an automatic adjustment, but gives you manual control for the most common adjustments. But coming next year, we'll actually read which lens you have, which camera body you have, and we'll automatically add correction as well. You can turn it off if you don't like it. You know, if you bought a fisheye and you want it to look like a fisheye, you want to have that control, but it can automatically, it'll automatically reduce that. And it's really important, especially on a lot of these newer mirrorless cameras. The lens correction is very, very important to have that data.
Yeah.
Right.
It comes out of those. Another big one that's coming is versions. So the ability to create and think of it as multiple copies of a photo without actually taking up more room on your disk. Each one of those can have their own settings.
Like a virtual copy in
Yeah,
Lightroom.
think of it just like a virtual copy in Lightroom.
That's awesome.
And you can even stack those virtual copies into one of those groups as well. So you could have your black and white version of the photo, your color version, whatever you want to do to it.
Wow.
Yeah. There'll be workspaces will come. Workspaces will let you create, think of it like a preset that doesn't actually change any of your settings. It just kind of preloads the stuff that's important to you. So
that idea.
yeah, so in develop, I can make one for black and white. That's got my tone and color pane and my black and white pane and my vignette pane. But Liz for portrait could do the tone and color pane, and then a skin retouching pane, and then maybe a split tone pane.
Yeah.
So you just pick what you want, get you started. You don't have to go through and configure all those panes manually. We'll also add camera profiles. So if your camera has different modes, a lot of times like the Fuji cameras, for example, you can actually pick different film types in the back of the camera. You want to shoot landscape or portrait or neutral, things like that. We'll be able to pick that up from the metadata, and we'll actually be able to apply that setting inside of Photo RAW. Wow. So if you want to shoot in Velvia, you can shoot in Velvia.
So cool.
All right. I think the last one I want to mention is module settings. So one thing you want to be able to do is see what you've done to a photo. So in Browse, and actually in all of the modules, you get a module settings pane. Think of it kind of like history, but it's a little different take on history. The problem with history is it's very linear. It shows every single thing that you've done, every brushstroke. And if you want to go back in time and make a change, as soon as you make that change, everything you've done after that is blown away. You lose all that work.
It's really frustrating from time to time.
So wouldn't it be cool if you had a non-linear history?
Yes,
that
it
just
would be
showed
cool.
you. Yes, that would be cool. That just showed you the important stuff. It just showed you which modules and which filters and which tools you used, and not individual brushstrokes. We don't really care about the individual brushstrokes.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that module settings, you'll see which modules, and which tools, and which filters you've used, and then you can simply double click on it. And it'll take you to that spot, so you can adjust it without blowing away everything above it.
Wow,
So
that's
it's
exciting.
much easier
a smart
way.
object built into.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So it makes it
Exciting.
easy to see what you've done,
Right.
easy to get back and change it, easy to turn something off. Let's say you've done all that work and you'd say, I don't want that texture. I could just uncheck the texture, it goes away.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's still there, it's just kind of turned off.
Nice.
All right. So lots of cool stuff coming. This is all stuff you're going to see in the first half of 2017, all a part of free updates that you'll see every month. All right.
Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I really want to hit on my favorite thing that you talked about, which is group. I was like, I'm sitting here this whole time, like, oh, can't wait to talk about this. Grouping. Grouping is huge, and this is one of those things that I didn't realize that most photographers kind of do in their own way. But grouping allows you to take a large amount of photos and put them down. And when you're doing something, I know I keep going back to weddings, but that's, I think out of the four of us, I'm the one that does the most weddings. And when you're working with a wedding and you're doing a large amount of photos, you've got, let's say, 15 photos of the wedding dress, and then 15 photos of the shoes and the wedding dress, and then another 15 photos of the ring. And you go through all of these different images, and it's like your clients don't need every single one of those. They need one or two really good ones. And so being able to group them together and look at them all and compare them and figure out which one's going to be best. Think about going from a folder of 500 images and then paring that down into 18 or 25 different groups. And then I know exactly which photos I need to edit and which photos I can process as fast as possible. And that is
Exactly.
so cool.
And I'm a landscape photographer that does a lot of time lapse and a lot of panoramics. So I'm getting set up to do, say, a 10-frame panoramic. I'll stick my hand in front of the lens, photograph my hand. I know that's the next frame is frame 1. Go through my 9 frames, photograph my hand. Or I'm going to do a time lapse. I want a 10-second, 24 frames a second time lapse. They're going to be 240 images. I don't have to scroll through 240 that basically identical, let's face it, images to get to the next set of landscape images that I want to edit. If I just select that whole stack of 240, collapse it, label that time lapse 1, then it just looks like one image in my stack. I know that's a time lapse there.
I do the exact same thing for HDR. I'll do the beginning of each bracket. I'll stick my hand up there. I know, that's the beginning of that sequence of 7 or 9 frames that I'm going to do.
Right.
So.
I love it. It's another one of those, everybody uses it for a different reason.
That's right.
And, I think about it from like the landscape perspective, where I sit there for hours on end, and sometimes I'm in the same spot. Where if I group this group of photos together from this spot, this group of photos together from this spot, the lighting changes during those times, so I can apply specific presets to this group and then a specific preset to this group, and kind of see them in that folder structure. And that's pretty cool.
Another great way to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's cool because we all see these different aspects and think about them differently, which is probably the same for the people that are watching this too. Think about how they can use that too and incorporate that.
Well, and hopefully some of these conversations can help you guys figure out how to use these features. I know that that's one of the things I've been thinking about today is like how I use this. Hopefully someone else will want to use it in a similar way. And you're getting a lot of different opinions about why these features can work in other people's workflow. I mean, I think you just got a group of 4 people who are really different photographers, and we're all telling you that we're finding ways to use these features. And I can't get over how cool that is. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, the thing that struck me more than anything else is the fact that you set up a form forum for people to contribute ideas about where they want to see the software go. And then you guys are listening, and you're able to be having a foresight to create it in a way that people can vote and they can decide, let's say we all want survey, or compare.
Yeah.
We want compare, we want versions, we want groups, and you see that those numbers start going up. Well, those are the things that I'm kind of most excited about that you were talking about, but a lot of people agree. And so really, really neat way to take user feedback and push the product forward in a direction that the community wants it to go.
Exactly.
And then we're going to talk in just a minute about ON1 Plus, but that's something we do in the Plus community too. It's just sort of an ON1 ethos, I think, is listening to the users and making sure that their products are going in the direction that those users want to see them go. And that's
I want to touch on that too, if you don't mind, real quick. Is that so? I talk about how I came out here about 2 months ago in September, and I was really impressed watching how you guys worked as a development team. And I think a huge throwback needs to go to the whole development team, because I know even as a user who's pretty in touch with you guys, sometimes I would think, is that crash report really going anywhere? And it's you have to be grounded and think that. But when I was there and I saw that as you walk by the hallway, there's a crash report right there for Windows and Mac, and they see all those crash reports that come in. And it's one of those things that if you're not submitting the crash reports, they don't know that it's not happening or if it is happening. So I always submit mine because, it's the thing to do, right? You submit it so you guys can see how that stuff works. But then I saw how the development team functioned on a daily basis. And you don't just meet in the morning or meet in the afternoon. There are several meetings where it's like, all right. And I was just sitting there talking with Nathan, and we were sitting in the chairs, and I watched you all kind of come together. In the middle of the day, it was probably like 1 o'clock. You guys are going into that office, and you're hammering things out and really getting things to the way they should be. So, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, is my crash report really going somewhere? I can tell you from experience that I've seen the crash report go somewhere. And I've even talked to Dan about my crash reports, and they are working on it. And that's the impressive part. And obviously you can't get to every single person, but knowing that stuff is being taken care of and seeing the percentages of those crash reports right there in real time in their office, it's not like you're sending your crash report into an abyss of nowhere and no one cares. You're sending your crash report into a place where people are actually looking at it and saying, okay, let's prioritize, let's rack and stack, and let's get these things fixed. And it's working. It's obviously working because you've been doing this even through the development of Photo RAW.
Yeah, and we can constantly watch that crash rate go down, and we actually work really hard to drive that rate down as low as possible. And I'm happy to say we're well below industry standards for that. So.
And I can tell you, Blake comes in from far away, so you think, well, they might just be showing off because Blake is in.
No.
But I live literally 5 minutes from there, and I've been pretty active over the last year and a half of being in there a lot, and that's just general day-to-day behavior. They're constantly crashing into little teams to make sure that the product's working as well as it possibly can.
Yeah. And even, the stuff that we talked about here, that is all driven by the Photo RAW project. All those new features that we're talking about, those are the most commonly talked about, the highest rated, the most voted comments that we have. So we're already putting that to use. And I can tell you, that's for the first half of the year. There's a lot in the second half of the year that we haven't decided on. That's what we need you guys to go to the Photo RAW project and tell us what's important to you. Tethered shooting is important to you. Tell us. That's how we're going to make the decisions about what to work on next. Yeah. So there's all sorts of cool things that we can do.
Well, it's one thing to know that continuous improvement is important. It's another thing to actually implement it. And you can't just think, okay, well, what do I want people to see? Because I do this a lot with my workflow systems. It's like, well, I know how my workflow works, but my workflow isn't necessarily what somebody else wants. And you find out very quickly that your workflow is not set in stone, so to speak. Everyone else has their way of working with things. And to know that you're paying attention to that and adapting the software to multiple different ideas. The fact that you're putting out a pre-release, we'll call it like the beta, to let people test the waters and get back to you with feedback, that's critical, because you're not saying, okay, this is the product that we've created and this is it. You're saying this is a product we've created, but we know that it has room for improvement, and that's where we need you to come in with those improvements. And to already know that you're even looking forward to what the improvements are going to be into March, that's pretty cool stuff. So
yeah, I mean, the way the world develops software has changed. It used to be, every 18 months you get a new version, and there was a very long dry spell in those 18 months where everything is much more agile now. So we're really about delivering continuous value, adding on to those features, getting what customers use, correcting our mistakes. So we really want things to be the way you want.
Well, and sometimes when you get software update reports and you're like, why am I updating this software? And they're like, oh, it's just bug fixes. And I'm like, well, it's not really that buggy anyways. Like, what's going on? And these are updates that you guys are actually going to be, chomping at the bit for. These are things that are going to make huge improvements to the actual software itself as a whole. It's not just them fixing a couple bugs here and there and giving you guys a shiny free product. These are big changes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really exciting. And you guys have been doing that for a while. And I always look forward to the next version because I know it's going to be something that's going to be really cool. And so it's like Hudson and I are going to be sitting at our computers waiting for grouping to show up, or we're going to be waiting for versions to show up. And that's really cool.
And I think it just generally your improvements always boil down to stability, speed, and more control, more levels of control. And it's just, it's fun.
Yeah.
You guys are constantly making me rethink my workflow, and I think that's a really great thing. The only change in the world, the only thing that stays the same in the world is change, and positive change is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's, just real quick, the idea that if you look at your photos from a year ago and they look the same as they do now, there's a problem with that. And the same thing with software. If you're looking at software from a year ago and expecting the same thing the next year, we have to leave that buffer or that room for improvement. And it's good that you recognize that.
That's something I tell my students all the time. If you're looking at your photos from 3 years ago and you think, wow, those were fantastic, well, then you haven't been working hard enough at your photography over the last 3 years. You should constantly be looking at something I did 6 months ago. Go, oh, God, if I only had figured out what I just figured out last month, my photos would be so much better from that trip to Patagonia, to Death Valley, to wherever it was you went. Right. So we've been talking a lot about how, user-driven and community-driven the software development process has been. There's another part of ON1 that's very user-driven and community-driven. It is a community. It's ON1 Plus. It's really exciting. We've had a really great year this last year. Blake's been involved. I've got a video explaining what it is. Blake's going to be joining me in ON1 Plus. So is Liz next year. Blake's actually going to be there in January, so he put together a little video, kind of what to expect in January. We're going to run that right now, and then we're going to talk about it. Hey, I'm Hudson Henry, and I couldn't be more excited to be talking about what we have in store for the ON1 Plus community in 2017. I know there's a few of you out there that aren't members of Plus, or maybe you've seen it and you're not quite sure what's behind door number Plus. Well, think about it like a membership. It's kind of like a club, and it's a club for people who are really excited about taking their photographic skills to the next level. That can involve capturing a little bit better image in the field, doing it a little bit better in camera, maybe figuring out how to scout and get in the right place to capture it in the camera better. It can involve perfecting your editing workflow, better protecting your images when you're storing them. It could involve developing your own photographic style and kind of developing your storytelling vision. Whatever it is you're interested in learning, I guarantee there's somebody in the Plus community that's also interested in it, and we're addressing it. How do we do that? We do that through monthly critiques. We do it through weekly videos that are really community driven and on topic. We've got a whole series of courses that I'll talk about in a second, a video library that's really deep about all the things that you're interested in, a forum for discussion between the coaches, between the community themselves, student galleries, contests, challenges. It's basically a ton of fun with a really cool group of people that are always there whenever you log on and look for it. I think at its core, Plus delves into this deep series of courses that we have. There's a course library that contains a few courses from last year, and we're going to add to it with 4 new courses this year. The courses that are already there from last year are one that's an in-depth ultimate guide to using ON1 Photo 10. That's going to get updated. Matt's putting the finishing touches on the ultimate guide, of course, to using ON1 Photo RAW, which I can't wait to see what he's put into that. There's dozens of videos, goes into every single detail of what you want to know about using the software. He's got another one just like that on Lightroom in there, Matt Kliskowski's ultimate guide to using Lightroom, and I'm telling you, there are dozens of videos covering every aspect of what you want to know to get the most out of Adobe Lightroom. I've got a course in there from last year on landscape and travel photography. that really starts at its core at kind of the basics. It's got everything from the exposure triangle and a lesson just completely on aperture and depth of field, another one on shutter speed and using time creatively, and then it kind of runs the gamut all the way up through complex things like HDR, panoramic mergers, and even time-lapse and a little dabbling with video with your still cameras. There's a new course that I'm going to be dropping in early 2017. I'm putting the touches on right now. It's really exciting. It's called Approaching the Scene. And essentially each lesson in the course is a scene in and of itself. So you're going to look at what's the scouting that goes into a portrait in a specific place, or a sports action shoot, or a landscape shoot, or a low light shoot, or a time-lapse shoot. We're going to go into the gear, the settings, sort of the mindset that you need to properly capture this image, and then take it back to the studio and edit it all the way through. So it's a scene from start to finish in every single lesson. We've got another course dropping in 2017 by Dan Harlacher, an ultimate guide to black and white photography. Matt's doing another course that's really exciting on long exposure, a whole course on long exposure. And a lot of these are community driven. We asked the community last year, what are you interested in seeing in new courses for 2017? And these are what they really asked for. I'm going to be doing a course later in the year next year on birds and wildlife, just completely nature focused photography course. There's a whole series of guest coaches. We're going to have guest coaches every month next year. We have a whole setup of guest coaches that's really exciting. It's a bunch of professionals with a really broad and diverse set of skills, backgrounds, and interests that I think the Plus community is going to have a ton of fun learning from. We've got Matt Kloskowski, of course. We've got Blake Rudis. We got Matt Seuss, Doug Landreth, Brian Matish, Colby Brown, Nicole Young, Liz LePage, Scott Davenport. I'm going to be there every month kind of creating some continuity and be the guy to kind of listen to what everybody in the Plus community wants and steer the discussion towards making sure that it's all topical. We have these great forums that everybody can participate in. I've seen such amazing discussions over the course of the last year. Everything from, you know, how do I really get a fine focus in a landscape image from the front to the back, to what do you think of this latest camera, to, hey, has anybody ever been to Monument Valley and where should I stay and what's a good location this time of year? We really, really do have a ton of fun in this community. I absolutely love the critiques. I think the critiques that we do every month are an amazing opportunity for people to put their photography out there and have a guest coach or me go through, take a look, and really tell you what they love about the photo and what could possibly be improved, either at capture or in the edit or both. You know, it's a great opportunity to get a critical eye on your own images. We do fun things like photo challenges where we'll say, go out and do something with flowing water this month and submit. We have contests where we actually have cash prizes, cash and gear for prizes. We do reverse photo challenges sometimes. You know, the community as a whole asked Matt Kloskowski and I last year to go out and create images in really crappy light, middle of the day, noon, sunny day. Because we've been challenging them to use good light so much, they decided to flip it on its head and send it back at us. We have a whole library of videos from those challenges to critiques to just things that come up in weekly topical videos. All those things are archived and easily accessed from last year, and they'll keep flowing through that archive next year. There was a week that Matt and I just focused on how to get the best quality prints, whether you're sending them to a lab or doing them yourself. All those videos are archived. We have another one on how to clean your sensor that I did, because so many people had dust in their sensors in the images that they were submitting. I thought it might be nice to show people that were intrepid enough how to clean their own sensors. We just have a ton of fascinating and interesting content and a great community of people. I can honestly say I haven't seen a single troll in the ON1 Plus community, and let's keep it that way. So I'm looking forward to a really great year of new content, new interaction, and having fun with this community in 2017.
Hello, Blake Rudis here. I want to take the time to give you a sneak peek on what's going to be happening with me and ON1 for next year, for 2017. Lots of really cool and exciting things coming our way. However, before I begin with that, we've got to give kudos and credit to the folks at ON1 for what they've created with Photo RAW. It's really opening possibilities for the raw photo editing, and beyond that, it's really just introducing new elements to our workflow that are really helpful. Whether you start in ON1 or you finish in ON1 or you stay the whole time in ON1, lots of awesome possibilities there. And I know for a fact that they've worked really hard on this because I've been in contact with them since I think we started conversations on this in April of 2016. Really incredible stuff, and just seeing the evolution of it and all the thoughts that they've had and just what they've been able to come up with ON1 Photo RAW. So a big high five, thumbs up, pats on the back all around for the folks at ON1. Awesome stuff. So what am I going to be doing in 2017 with the folks at ON1? Well, quite a bit actually. We're going to start the new year off in January. I'm going to be a guest coach for the entire month of January on ON1 Photo RAW. And what I want to talk about with that, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek on what I want to talk about with that. I want to really debunk a lot of the myths and a lot of the ideologies. I guess how do I want to say this? I want to tear down the walls of the stuck in the blinders mentality of you've got to stay here, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. So what do I mean by that? Well, the thing is, I get a lot of people that say, okay, well, now we got this new ON1 thing, do we just have to throw Photoshop away? Or now that ON1 Photo RAW, is this really going to change anything I do with Photoshop? And those are great questions. They're all very valid questions. So what I'm going to be doing in January is creating a course for ON1 Plus users that is going to help them better understand the ecosystem of photo workflow. And that's an interesting word. I was talking with Dan and Patrick about this a couple weeks ago on a conference call, and Dan from the development team said the words ecosystem in reference to photo post-processing when it comes to ON1 and Photoshop. And I thought that was a really interesting word because it's something that we just don't think about sometimes. So we get stuck. Like I think it's what they call as blinkers or something that they put on horses so that they don't see anything on the sides of them. This is narrow-minded thinking. So I really want to destroy narrow-minded thinking with this course and open up Photoshop in a way that ON1 users know how to use it. So if you're really strong in ON1 and not so strong in Photoshop, I want to introduce you to some things that are going to help you out to increase your workflow and make your images better, because it is an ecosystem, okay? But let's say you're really strong in Photoshop and not so strong in ON1. There are some similarities between the two programs that you can find and how things cross-reference, and then you'll better understand, okay, I'm in ON1, I know what I need to do now, I know what I need to do over here in Photoshop, let's blend them and really understand that ecosystem of photo post-processing. So let's tear down the walls of, oh, well, I only have to use this, or I can only use this. No, see, the thing is, it's an ecosystem. And if you really want to get the best pictures you can possibly create, you're going to have to learn how to go from ON1 into Photoshop, from Photoshop into ON1, and the likewise could be for something like Lightroom. Now, I'm a Photoshop guy, so of course, I'm going to be showing you Photoshop and ON1. I'll also be coming back in August as a guest coach in August. Now, I haven't quite decided what my plan is going to be for August because that's way too far in advance. I barely even know what I'm eating for lunch today, and that's in an hour and a half. So I'll be there in January. I'll be there in August for an entire month to help you in ON1 Plus and be a guest coach with you. I had the pleasure of doing this in 2016, and it was awesome. I was introduced to a lot of new people, a lot of new faces, and the community there is awesome. I just can't wait to jump back into it. I'll also be continuing as a guru with ON1 in 2017, so be prepared to see more short clips, more workflow tutorials, more inspiration series, maybe an ebook. We'll see what happens, okay? The great thing about this is that we're starting 2017 with ON1 with a fresh slate, okay? They've taken all the concepts that we've thought about that ON1 delivered before and given us something brand new and exciting to look forward to. So all the content that you're gonna see for 2017 is going to be fresh, new content with a fresh, new piece of software that I think is really gonna revolutionize my workflow in that ecosystem that we talk about. So if you're a Plus member, I'll see you as a guest coach in January. Looking really forward to it. If you're not a Plus member, you should probably consider it because it's a really awesome membership with a community of people that is just inspirational, all right? I'll also see you throughout the year with some workflow tips, some short clips, some inspiration series, an ebook, and all kinds of good stuff coming your way for 2017.
So we're going to have a ton of fun in January in the ON1 Plus community talking about all the ways that we can adjust our workflow to take advantage of these crazy new tools that Photo RAW has brought us. And, you know, I think that that's the key to the ON1 Plus community is it's topical. You know, we've got a new tool set that's landed at our feet here with ON1 Photo RAW. We're going to spend some time talking about how do we integrate that into our workflow, and we're going to listen to the community and see what people want to know and where they want to, you know, where are they wanting their focus on, what can they learn about Photo RAW. It's very, very community driven. We've got topical videos every week. We've got guest coaches every month. You know, Blake's going to be here in January. Liz is going to be here this summer. We're probably going to focus a lot on people photography that particular month. There's really something for everyone in Plus. And I think, you know, in your typical month, you're going to be able to expect an opportunity to get a photo of your own critiqued by a coach, somebody that actually sit down, cut a video talking about, you know, here's what you did great. Here's what you might have improved, either in the field or in the edit or both. You're going to have all kinds of videos on current topics and community-driven topics that are popping up on a bi-weekly basis. You've got a gallery that the whole community can submit to, and people have these vibrant conversations where they're, you know, excited about each other's images, they're giving notes, they're saying, wow, I wish, you know, where was that? Where do I find that? We've got forums with people asking questions of the coaches, commenting about new gear, asking questions about locations, asking questions about editing, asking questions about what to do in the field shooting. You know, there's sort of all there. And the whole thing's built around a series of video courses that we're constantly updating. This next year, we're coming up with the Approaching the Seam video that I previewed. In the video, it's a whole series in a course on a different scene, each video from start to finish, out in the field. What's the scouting? What's the gear? How do I get this shot right in camera? And then how do I edit it through a finished image? We've got Matt Kliskowski coming out with a whole course on long exposure photography. Dan is doing a master's level course on black and white photography. And then towards the end of the year, we're gonna be doing one specifically on nature photography, birds and wildlife, that I'm really excited to be producing for 2017. So tons and tons of fun, really interactive, community-based.
I think my favorite part is the challenges that you guys do.
Oh.
Those are great.
That's right. You know, and we do challenges where the coaches challenge the community to go out and capture a specific type of image, send it back in. Sometimes those challenges are actually contests, and we have cash and fun gear prizes for the community. Sometimes the community flips it on its head and sends us coaches out on a challenge. You know, I thought that the reverse photo challenge with Matt and I taking photos in crappy light was hysterical.
You know, everybody's got to learn it at some point in their lives. You know, when you're out, there are some situations where you just can't control the light, and so you got to start getting creative. And I like the fact it's hard because sometimes when you look at Hudson's videos, you're like, God, Hudson is so good at this. And it's like, let's give Hudson a really hard challenge. And then you find out that he's like a really incredible photographer. And you're like, holy cow, he's good. So I like that because it's awesome. You guys are challenging people who are incredible photographers, and you can see what they can do with really difficult situations.
I'll tell you one little dirty secret about coaching the ON1 Plus community. And that's that as a coach, I've been learning so much from the community as a whole. And we have some members that just really shine, and they're so active, they're so engaged, and they ask such great questions. I mean, they stump me all the time, and if I didn't have Google in my pocket, you know, there's times where I'm like, wow, I never even thought about that question, and I really have to delve deep. You know, as many years as I have in the photography game, I get questions all the time that I've never really thought about, and some of them change my thinking about the subject as a whole. And so I have developed a lot over this last year just from the coaching process. And I think there's a lot of people in the community who would say that their engagement in this community has really upped their game photographically. And in fact, I can definitively say that because I've been watching these people's critique submissions month after month. You know, we're down, I don't know, we've had 10 critique, and every single month they incrementally get better. And now we're at the point where I'm looking at these just amazing images from all over the world. I'm looking through people's lenses on every continent on the planet. I mean, we've had Antarctica photos. I'm not joking here. You know, from the Arctic to the Antarctic, from Africa to Asia to South America, it spans the globe. And we've got people commenting from all over the globe. And it is just a ton of fun.
Well, you know, and the thing about critique sessions is some of us grew up in the world of art school. And when you go to art school, it's mandatory that you have critique sessions at the end of a project. So you might be one of those people sitting at home who comes up with this creative project that you want to discover in the world of photography. So maybe you go out and you do some macro stuff, and then you get no feedback on it. And you don't know if you did something right, you don't know if you did something wrong, and you don't know if there's any room for improvement. Some of the critique sessions that I've sat through in my life growing up as an art student were 6 hours long, and they were grueling. But when I look back at my art school career, if we'll call it that, I learned more in those critique sessions than I did from any instruction from any of those teachers. And what I found through the critique process with the Plus community and also with my own communities is that the most valuable sessions that we offer are critique sessions. And a lot of times I survey the individuals that are in my community. I'm pretty sure you guys have done the same thing, where you put that survey out and you say, okay, what's your favorite feature of this thing? And my concept was going to be, oh, it's the courses, it's this. Well, it turns out that the critique sessions end up being that great thing that people come back to. And the results that I received from that survey were astronomical on the length of how the critique sessions help them more than any other aspect of the course. So I'm sure you see the same thing in the Plus community, because you're not just getting, and we can't look at critique as the word constructive criticism, because it's a very harsh thing to think of. Yeah, it's criticism, but it's constructive, right? It's more like, let's call it constructive development. So you look at the images and you say, you know what, you're doing an amazing job here. I love the composition, love this, love that, but you might have gone a little bit overboard on this aspect of the photograph. And if you just taper down a little bit on the contrast here, you'd have a shining example of X, Y, Z. And those are the types of critiques that you can expect to see. So a lot of times you have people that are afraid to have their images critiqued. I did this the other day. I needed a critique from my website. This is dirty. So I needed a critique from my website. So someone had sent me an image that wasn't part of the critique, and I emailed them back. I said, hey, I just critiqued your image, so if you weren't ready to get in the pool, I just pushed you in. But the email I got back from her, she was so excited because it was something that she was intimidated by doing. She was intimidated by having one of her images critiqued because it sounds very formal, it sounds very definite, and it's scary. But then once you receive that information from a coach, it's a reciprocal thing. I learned more about photography when I open up, I guess we'll call it my third eye, towards somebody else's stuff and look at theirs from a critical eye. Then I go on the scene and I think to myself, Blake, if you were to put this in your own critique session, what would people say about this? And I'm like, I should probably move my camera a little bit. Or maybe I shouldn't apply that much dynamic contrast. Or maybe because you start to think about it from the perspective of somebody's going to be seeing this, and are they going to be seeing the same thing I'm seeing? And if my vision doesn't match the vision of the viewer and what they're expecting to see, then you have a communication mismatch between photographer and viewer.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the most important and critical experience. So the beauty of these critique sessions, I'm going a little long on this, but I want to tell you that these are important. The beauty of a critique session is that you get the viewer perspective, because we do become viewers. We're photographers, but we're the most critical viewers you'll ever meet. So we're viewers first, then we put on the photographer hat, and then we coach you and help you on how to make those things better. And there's really no better way to grow than to have someone look at your image. And you're not going to get, I've even been in there and looked at, I did my research when I was a coach last year, and I looked at all your past critique sessions. It took me a couple hours to go through them, but when I went through them, I was like, okay, these guys aren't mean.
No.
They aren't trying to belittle, berate, or beat anyone down. They're trying to really make people grow. And I think the way you do it and how it comes off is so beneficial to the community.
And I think Matt and I have developed, when we kind of developed this thing last year, I have a method that we open the image blind in a browser. You'll open a page from the gallery and you just open each image blind in the browser. And I'm not saying, Dan, I really think you should have taken the lens cap off before you tripped the shutter. I'm literally saying, this image, and it doesn't have a name attached to it, as I run a video with, say, 12, 15 critiques encased, and then you'll get a notification that you're in video 5, and you can just kind of scrub through and find where your image is critiqued, and it's blind that way. And I think that is a little bit more open, and it makes me feel a little more comfortable who aren't used to having their images publicly critiqued. So that's one nice thing that we do. I think that I completely agree with you. I think the critiques are foundational. I think the courses that we offer are also unique. And this year in 2017, we have a new system where as you enroll in a course, your progress is going to be tracked, and you're going to be able to open that course on any of your various devices. It's going to know just where you left off. It's going to be trackable, and you'll be able to download those courses to watch whenever you want. Say you're traveling far afield and you want to remember that lesson from last year's landscape and travel series on composition, or one of Matt's lessons on his ultimate guide to either Photo RAW or to Lightroom that are available for ON1 Plus community, or any of the new courses that are dropping next year. So I think that there's just a whole lot of room for people to learn and develop their photography in the Plus community.
I think one more thing to think about on critiques is something that people miss out on. They think about the critique of their photo,
Right.
but it's really all the other photos that you're getting to see. You're looking at new perspectives and new techniques. I never would have thought to have used that lens at that angle. It's increasing your visual vocabulary. You're learning from everybody's critiques, not just your photo. And if you get that notification and all you do is go look at what they say about your photo, you're missing the point. You're missing all the great stuff you're going to learn.
I have found myself so many times in the critiques saying, this is not the kind of photography I would ever think of doing, but you have floored me. You know, this is really interesting, and I will be thinking about scenes differently as a consequence of looking at your image. I've said that in just about every critique session that we've run.
When you learn the difference between artistic expression and technical flaw, because when you're in the very beginning of things, you think that you're doing an artistic expression when you find out that it's really a technical flaw, like taking an HDR image to the extreme. That's not really artistic expression. It's looked at as a technical flaw to other photographers. So you get to see the difference between, okay, did I take this too far in the expression area, or did I take this too far in the technical extreme? And then you start to balance things out, and it really refines your style. And that's the important part. When we talk about the greats that have gone before us, Ansel Adams, Weston, these individuals who had a style, they grew that style because those individuals, whether you know it or not, had good buddies that were looking at their stuff and saying, you know what, Ansel, I don't know if you should do that one. Stick to what you're good at here, because they had someone with a critical eye that could tell them how to take their photography to the next level. And that's exactly what that introduces in that community concept.
So there's a whole lot of opportunities to learn and develop and join this community and find people to share the adventure with in the ON1 Plus community. You can sign up just for ON1 Plus, or you can sign up for ON1 Plus Pro and get Photo RAW for forever along with it. So jump in, check that out. We hope you'll join us, but I want to make sure we have some time for Q&A at the end of the session, because we're starting to run low on time.
Well, it's really hard to not talk about this. We could literally stand here and talk all day, you guys. But I want to make sure that we've been asking you guys to submit questions all day, and so we want to make sure that you guys get a chance to hear some of the answers to those questions that you've been asking. You've been with us all day. So we want to make sure that all of the information that you guys are really hungry for gets answered in the last little bit of session 3, because we're nearing the end. So I'm going to pass it off to Dan, and he's going to ask a couple of the ones that we know are really important.
Yeah, so one of the questions that comes up a lot is around system requirements. What kind of computer am I going to need to run this on? You'll need a Mac or a Windows computer running an operating system from the last couple of generations. So we'll go from Windows 7 through Windows 10, and on the Mac from 10.9 through 10.12, or excuse me, 10.9 through 10.12. You'll need 4 gigabytes of RAM. That's not a whole lot. One of the beauties of going to the video card is that it's actually on a video card. It doesn't need a whole lot of memory for working on it. So 4 is enough. If you're working through Photoshop, probably 8 is better, because Photoshop's going to use up a lot of that memory on its own. It doesn't give us as much left to work with. The one thing that does change is the video card requirement. So in the past, we required OpenGL 2.0, which is pretty old. That's like 10, 11 years old technology-wise. For this version, you're going to need a video card that supports OpenGL 3.3. Now that, even of itself, is pretty old. 7 or 8 year old video cards will still support OpenGL 3.3. Just about any Mac that runs a modern operating system will support that. And any Windows computer probably made in the last 6, 7, 8 years will support that as well. On Windows, it is key that you download the latest driver for your video card, though. A lot of the times, especially if you've upgraded your operating system, they'll install kind of a generic driver, which doesn't really take all advantage of what your video card can offer. So make sure you have up-to-date video card drivers. And if it doesn't support it, it'll tell you. If you don't know if your video card is supported, I would actually just go to Wikipedia, and you can actually look that card up, and it'll give you all the specifications for it, if it supports what we need or not. In terms of supported hosts, it'll work on Photoshop CS6 and newer, Photoshop Elements 14 and newer, Lightroom 5 and newer. It'll also support Apple Photos. That won't be in the preview release, but in December you'll be able to use it through Apple Photos as well. I'm sorry, in this release we did stop supporting Apple Aperture. That's a product that Apple's no longer supporting. If you have your photos in Aperture still, we'll have a blog post that'll tell you how to export those out into a folder structure where you'll be able to take advantage of Photo RAW with those. All right, let's see, we have a couple other questions here. One about external editors and using other plugins. So inside of Browse, you can actually set up as many external editors as you want. We'll automatically find Photoshop and we'll automatically find Lightroom. We'll also find all of the Google Nick plugins. If you have those installed, you can use those as external editors. So in Browse, you can click on a photo and say, send it to this. You can set up as many as you want. Like I set up mail on mine, so I can just easily email a file. But you can set up whatever you want.
Dan,
hang out with you more
you learned the best tidbits from Dan.
Yes. Well, actually, you don't even have to do that anymore because there's the share button. You just click the share button, and you can automatically send it to email or Facebook or Twitter or all those different sharing services on a Mac.
Nice.
But if on Windows, you would just set up Outlook as an external editor, and you can send it straight away. But you can also set up anything you want. So, like if you use the Topaz plugins, if they work as a standalone application, you can use those like a plugin inside of ON1 Photo RAW. So as if you use the is it Fusion, I think they call it, their harness that lets them run as a standalone app, you can do that.
I also want to make sure that I point out that these requirements are on OnOne's website. So I know that Dan is throwing all this information at you, and everybody's like
I hope you're
frantically
writing
trying
this
to
all
write down,
down,
like,
so.
oh my God, is this going to support? Don't worry about it. This is all on our website. So if you do have any questions, jump over there, and you can look at all these requirements. You can look at the information side by side with your computer's information, and you can make sure that it'll work together.
Let's see. There was another question about correcting for chromatic aberration. That's a great word. I love that, chromatic aberration. So what that means is sometimes, especially around specular highlights, you can get kind of a pink or a green halo around those edges. And it actually can be caused by a couple different things. The initial chromatic aberration is actually taken care of on a raw photo during the demosaicing process. When we actually develop it into an RGB photo, a lot of that chromatic aberration comes from the algorithm that's used to do that. So our algorithm is very good at reducing that at the time that it's developed while maintaining sharpness. Beyond that, we'll be adding 2 levels of chromatic aberration in next year. One is based around lens profiles. That's the other place where the chromatic aberration can come from, is at the curvature of the lens, the light aligns differently, and that'll cause that to happen as well. That's something that can be measured and corrected automatically through the lens profiles that we'll be adding. But the third one is if I've already got a JPEG, let's say I shot it on my iPhone, it's very common around a specular highlight to get that, so there'll be manual corrections that you can use for chromatic aberration as well. So we kind of got you covered all different ways.
I hate those things. With the burning passion.
Some lenses are better than others.
You're right.
Yeah, it really does vary. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. You guys have any questions?
I actually have a question for you. Is Photoshop Elements going to be one of the programs that you can use as a plugin through ON1 Browse?
Yes, you can set it up manually. I honestly can't remember if we detect it automatically. We may or may not, but it's really easy to set up an external editor of your own.
I
So,
love Photoshop Elements. It's
Yeah.
an incredible program, and I know a lot of you guys, Photoshop can be a little daunting to think about, okay, so this is $9.99 a month if I want Photoshop and Lightroom, and Photoshop Elements is something that you can literally buy one price for and you can keep it forever. So I actually still have Photoshop Elements 11, I think, on my computer, and I used to do training all about the program, and I think it's an incredible way to get started with Photoshop before you jump into the big scary program. So I always like to make sure that all my Photoshop Elements peeps are covered because I love that program.
yeah.
Nice.
All right, who else has questions? Come
Looking
on.
through here, we've actually done a pretty good job of answering as many questions as I've been sent. We do have one that's come up a few times. We've talked about it once before, but I'll just kind of reiterate around color management. So it's a fully color managed workflow. All of the embedded or tag profiles in your photos, whether it's raw or not, will be honored. Internally, all of the work in that imaging pipeline is actually all done in ProPhoto RGB. So we convert it into a big, large space so that we can make big transforms and be able to get all of the greens and get all of the lavender colors out of it. Sometimes you lose in smaller color spaces. Then when you do your save as and you export it, we'll compress that down using relative color metric with black point compensation to make sure we can keep as much of those colors perceptually as you can keep in that different color space. And you can pick any of the common color spaces for export, sRGB, Adobe RGB, or any color space that you import, any profile you want to import. And then when it comes to printing, same thing. You can automatically pick whatever printer profile you want, even custom ones you've made.
So I do have a follow-up question on color management, and it's something that I constantly was asking Adobe people years ago with Lightroom. Are you looking in the future towards maybe supporting soft proofing? As a guy who loves to print,
That is one that we've definitely seen. Something I want to look at. If you guys want soft proofing, go to the Photo RAW project page and vote it up. It's already up there. You can just
vote it up.
do a search for it and say, "Yep, give it a vote." And the more votes it gets, the more likely is that we'll add that.
It's not just Hudson running from computer to computer.
We actually have blocked your IP address at this point. So.
Look, I already used mine.
That's right.
All right, you guys. So we are unfortunately nearing the end of live session number 3. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the stuff that we went through today. We started out talking about what's new inside of ON1 Photo RAW. And as you saw, there were a ton of brand new features. We all talked about some of our favorite features. And I know that each one of us has something that we're like really stoked for. So we started talking about what's new and all of our favorite features. Hudson and Blake really took it away with Lightroom and Photoshop integration. Thank you guys so much for doing that, because I really rely on you guys talking about both of those programs. So we got to hit both of those. And then here at the end, you got to hear us talk about what's coming next with ON1. And as you saw, it does not stop here. We have so much more information coming. And we got to hear all about the ON1 Plus community, which sounds pretty amazing. I haven't coached yet, and so I'm really, really excited about getting to this
I'm really
next
excited
year.
about that too.
Because I've been a lurker. That
It's
sounds
a great
creepy.
time.
Well,
But
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
creeping so much, and so I'm really excited to finally be able to do this with you
I'm
guys.
really excited to have you and to have Dan building one of the master's courses for next year. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
I
So
did a
we-
short stint there last year for 2
Well,
weeks.
Yes.
Blake's,
You're
Blake's
coming back
already
right
in the
away.
past.
It was awesome.
You're like taking off, and
Right.
you're killing it with 2017.
I claimed it.
So, so we went through all this information today, and I know a lot of you guys didn't get to join us until live session number 3, but don't worry, everything was recorded. So not only are you going to be able to watch the videos that we created in between a lot of these sessions, you're also going to be able to watch all of our live sessions here. And I know that we went through so much information, and many of you guys are frantically taking notes, and put your pencils down. It's gonna be all right, you guys. Everything is gonna be back at you. Now, the next thing that's really huge that I want to make sure I really hammer in there, you are going to be able to get the beta pre-release on Wednesday, November 23rd, which is 2 days from now?
2 days.
2 days. 2. I want to make sure that 2
Yeah.
days, guys. You actually get to have this on your computers and playing around with it, which is really, really exciting. It's for pre-orders and Plus members. And so you guys are going to have a lot of time to practice with the software and get ready for the actual release, which comes on December 19th. So you've got 2 dates here, and you get to play around with beta. And then once you're done playing around with beta, you're going to get all these awesome features that Dan was telling you about. Are not in the beta, but are coming December 19th. And then don't forget, all of those free updates are going to be coming through the end of 2016 and then on through the first couple months of 2017. So we're really just, you guys are working really
They're busy. They're busy. And I
You
want
guys are
to.
working crazy hard. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to end this session. But I want to make sure that each one of us gets an opportunity to talk a little bit about where you can find more information about us. Because Dan works for ON1. But the rest of us are professional photographers, and we do a lot of other training and a lot of other educational work outside of just ON1. So I guess I will start out. You can find me at elizabethlepage.com. I have a blog. I write a lot about the emotional side of photography, and I'm really, really excited to continue with that next year. Unfortunately, I was working another job this year, but I am focusing 100% on photography in the next year, so I'm really, really stoked to get back to that. And then the best way to find me out in the world is through my Instagram. If you guys want really adorable pictures of dogs, you're gonna be able to want to come through me. So I am Liz_Lepage. I'm gonna pass it off to Dan.
Obviously, I work at ON1, so the easiest way to get a hold of me is through our customer service guys. They're more than happy to forward questions on to me. So just go to the website, go to support. If you can't find your answer there, our support team is very fast and very professional. They'll give you the answer you need right away. And if it's something that they need to ask me about, I'll take care of it.
So obviously the ON1 Plus community knows to find me at ON1 Plus, but I'm really active on my website. I've got a blog. You go to my website, it's easy, hudsonhenry.com. A lot of people want to flip that on its head. They want to call me Henry. My first name's actually Hudson. But hudsonhenry.com, really easy. And there's links to social there. I've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, really active. There's a YouTube channel. You can email me direct from the page. There's lots of contact info. And of course, always at ON1 Plus. Blake.
And you have an incredible portfolio on your website. I just have to mention that. I went
No,
there and I was
we
like,
all need to mention that. Hudson's photography is incredible.
Gorgeous stuff. So, I'm Blake Rudis. I'm a photo educator. Mainly spend most of my time in Photoshop and jump into ON1. You can find me at f64academy.com. Very similar to our our fellow forefathers of photography from Group F64. If you've ever heard of that, the history of photography, it's very much a play on that because I'm very passionate about presenting high quality photo education no matter what it is that I'm talking about. So f64academy.com. I'm horrible at social media, so don't worry about that. Just go to the website and that's where you'll find the best stuff. I do have a very active YouTube channel and I upload all of that content to the website on Fridays. And I really just want to take the time right now to thank ON1 for having me out to Portland, because anytime I can come to the Pacific Northwest and hang out with this group of awesome individuals, I will take that in a heartbeat, and it's been a blast being here. So thank you very much for having me.
It's been awesome having Blake here, and I want to thank the entire crew that made this whole live broadcast possible.
Thank
You know,
you.
there's Andy, Steve, Woody, Nathan, and Patrick, all behind the scenes
You don't
here.
see them, but they're all over.
You don't see them, but they're here. And Andy's the master wizard behind the curtain for us all here. So Andy Adkins.
And a huge shout out to everybody back at the ON1 office, to all of our developers and QA engineers for putting in the extra hours. They were in all weekend long squishing bugs. So you guys deserve a big rest, and I thank you for all your dedication.
And then the last thing, we want to make sure that we thank our ON1 users. You guys are really what make this worthwhile, and you're what makes it work. You know, we can't make software for no one. We have to make software for people who are really excited about what we do. So thank you guys so much for everything that you do, for all the feedback you're doing to make sure that our product is killer when it finally comes out. And thank you guys so much for joining us here today. We really, really appreciate it. So hopefully we will see you guys soon. And don't forget to download that pre-release on Wednesday the 23rd.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.